The First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am might be joined by Ross. Ross is looks like he's going to have a meeting with the boss, and you just you can't tell the boss no, and so we will try to carry on without Ross. Bella is working the cameras. Bella, a young runner, and we were talking about running, and certainly it has been a hot month to run. I know that's personally why we get up earlier and earlier. My wife and I, we get up at 4:45 now, so that we're running by 4:40, 5:45 or 6. But this morning, because I was running at 6 in the morning, I just happened to see a late turtle nester, a mother turtle. She was still laying her eggs, and it was just me and the turtle people, and that made it for a really special run. With that said, folks, we've been showing this through May, and I think it's kind of snuck up on some people, because some folks seem to be surprised that it's a record, because we expect it to heat up during May, and basically locally we tend to think of the transition from May to June is to summer. It is the transition to meteorological summer. But if you're new to the area or you've forgotten, no, it's not supposed to be this hot. So right now we're on track for the hottest May ever recorded as far as afternoon highs. The average high is now at 90.4. As you can see, it's close, 1962. We're at 90.3, but we're shattering the average high for May, and at 90.4, and it's going to be really close, because that particular number goes through yesterday's high, which was 95. Today we're also going to be over 90.4. We'll probably be over that again tomorrow. Friday and Saturday, the last 2 days, are the only iffy days. So if you're kind of a statistical nut like me, it's going to be interesting following this. Another aspect to this particular record that I find interesting is it's not like we've had a lot of record highs. We've had one, maybe two record highs. It's just that we have been consistently above average from early May, when the average high is 83, to now late May, when the average high is 88 degrees. But you can see what Bella there has on the bottom of the screen, and that is increasing thunderstorms through Friday. Shouldn't be a surprise. We've talked about this, that day by day thunderstorms increasing. Even today, they'll increase from where they are now. We're going to take a look at them with radar. So thunderstorms will increase today, probably through about 8 o'clock. Tomorrow we'll have more thunderstorms than today, and Friday we're going to call a weather impact day, because we think the thunderstorms will be widespread enough that they're going to reach what we call the threshold, and our threshold, just so you know, of course this time of the year we expect thunderstorms. So we don't put weather impact alert days out anytime we expect a thunderstorm. We do that when we think about 70% of us will have thunderstorm activity. We're going to be close tomorrow, but we think we're going to hit that threshold on Friday. So let's go to the big picture. Mainly because the reason for that increase is the heat's in place, the moisture in place, but very often for it to become widespread, like 70% of us to have thunderstorms, we need more than just the sea breeze type event. Today's pretty much going to be the West Coast sea breeze will produce some showers and thunderstorms. It's going to head east. When it hits the East Coast sea breeze, it'll expand the thunderstorms. That's why we're talking about 5 to 8 as far as the highest risk of thunderstorms today and this evening. By Thursday, the front will be approaching, and so that's going to be an added triggering mechanism. And then on Friday, especially Friday night, the front will actually push through. And this is for late May, early June. It's a relatively strong front. We've seen this now 3 days in a row. Topeka has only been in the 50s the last couple of days. Topeka 68. That's sort of the center of cool air. And notice it is pressing to the southeast. If you look to the west of us, New Orleans, Dallas, which are typically, even Little Rock, which typically they're as hot as we are, notice they are in the 70s. They're in rain-cooled 70s. And for that matter, let's look at Denver, 63 degrees, New York City 57. That kind of paints where the wettest weather is. So here's a look at, this has been the last 24 hours around the nation. And if you watch it a few times, it's slow, but focus on like Chicago. And most of the precipitation east of Chicago is headed east and then north. And most of the precipitation west of Chicago is headed west or south. So you can kind of paint this very large low pressure. And that's because through the upper levels, through about 30,000 feet, the weather's rotating around that. And because of that orientation, it's why the frontal system is really pretty far south for this time of the year. If you look closely, you can even see a couple severe thunderstorm warnings that are out in Texas and Louisiana. But for now, let's zoom in. Just plain steady rain, some of it heavy. Not talking about shutting down airports, but if you have some loved ones flying or you're going to fly, Philly right now, New York City, steady rainfall with heavy traffic. That's probably going to be enough to at least produce some delays for the rest of the afternoon in Philadelphia and New York. So I'm not talking about severe storms, but just plain because of the steady rain and the low visibilities. Now we're going to go west to Colorado to Kansas. There is a severe thunderstorm warning, if you can see there, out over the plains of Colorado. But that area of precipitation is particularly interesting to us because that's going to be sort of the final push that pushes that cool front eventually toward us. Now we're down into Texas. We'll see increasing thunderstorm activity west of I-35 there between Dallas and Waxahachie. I'm just saying that because I had a roommate from Waxahachie. That's not too far from Waco. But most of the thunderstorms now stretch from Dallas through down to Tyler. It's near where Anthony's from. Just east of Bryan College Station, which of course is near the fighting Texas Aggies. It's now southeast of Oklahoma, which is where Bella did her running. We just learned that today. And then if you look from the parishes of Louisiana, that's the Sabine River, by the way, that separates Texas from Louisiana, all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. That's a major push of energy, and we're going to be watching that because the fact that that's continuing over the Gulf is significant to us. And what I mean by that is it's that time of the year where all things being equal, we expect at night and during the early morning hours more likely to see thunderstorms over the Gulf because that's where the warmer source is. But then once the day and the land temperatures heat up, we expect to see a big decrease in thunderstorms over the Gulf and then an increase over land. The fact that then deep into the afternoon there's still a line of thunderstorms over the Gulf, that indicates to us there's probably more than just heat going on. There's probably a front. And of course there is a front. We've talked about it. So that radar is a signature of that. And that's going to be it is interesting to watch. We're going to try to figure out the timing of that. The easiest part of this forecast is to say thunderstorms will be increasing today, tomorrow, Friday, but of course we'd love to really nail it down for you. For instance, on Friday, right now we have all of Friday as a weather impact alert day, but that doesn't mean we think it's going to rain all day Friday. I think we're actually going to have several rounds of showers and thunderstorms. It's just kind of tough at this point to really nail it down. But that's Friday. Let's just talk about today. Lightning, I think, really hops out at you, and we have scattered thunderstorms. Notice on both coasts over Central and South Florida, and that's because both the Atlantic Coast sea breeze and the West Coast sea breeze are active. But notice if you look over North Florida and southeastern Georgia, you really don't see much happening on the East Coast because there's really not much of an East Coast sea breeze. We call it a dominant Gulf Coast sea breeze. There's a few other things going on there, but basically, as the breeze comes in off the Gulf and that combines with the heat of the day, then we see scattered thunderstorms. Pretty strong event there, now working through extreme northern Camden and Glenn County. And if it hasn't hit you folks in Brunswick yet, it's about ready to. A lot of lightning. Probably get some wind gusts to about 45 miles per hour. Another pretty strong thunderstorm complex now getting into the southern parts of the Okefenokee, and then other thunderstorms down around Marion County. So if you kind of connect the dots from Brunswick to west of Folkestone on down to Alachua County, that's the area of thunderstorm activity that will be moving from west to east. It's one of the reasons why we said the highest amount of thunderstorms will be 5 to 8, but really we have thunderstorms now. And I think, remember, you're looking to the west, those thunderstorms are moving west to east. So this pretty much verifies what we've talked about, that we're going to have thunderstorms, at least in a scattered fashion, heading into the Jacksonville metropolitan area and for the rest of the First Coast, especially along our coastal counties. Because what will happen is these thunderstorms, just as they get to about I-95, they'll hit the sea breeze, and that'll be a further reason for thunderstorms to become enhanced, to become stronger, to become more widespread. Kind of like if you've ever been to the beach and you see one wave going out from the beach and another wave coming in, where they hit, they briefly create this sort of splash. And that's very similar to what's happening when we have what we call sea breeze convergences. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit to check out the Jacksonville metropolitan area, which we tend to say is Nassau, Duval, Clay, and St. John's, merely because that's about where 90% of us live. So we've talked about, for those of you in northern Camden and Glenn County, that's a pretty strong storm. Elsewhere, just a few showers, except for what's happening over the extreme southern Okefenokee. It's probably going to get into Folkestone within about the next hour. We see some other showers in southwest Nassau County. Others, not a whole lot, but still, I think you can kind of see where, think of it as bubbling energy coming at us from the Gulf of Mexico. And as that combines with the heat of the day and then gets into where the sea breeze is, we should see those thunderstorms erupt probably in a pretty big way over about the next hour. Now, I've added sensitivity to the radar. Can you see the sea breeze? That's that green kind of squiggly line, and it's moving from west to east. So that's the sea breeze. And as then these thunderstorms then intersect with the sea breeze, that's when we'll see these thunderstorms, I think, at least in some areas, explode into much larger thunderstorms. And because the winds out of the about 5,000 foot level are from the southwest, once the thunderstorms get strong enough, they'll actually come back toward you folks out around the beaches. So although you folks out toward the beaches, you're thunderstorm free now, but just do know that later this afternoon and mostly into the evening, those thunderstorms that you see formed to the west, they'll probably come back your way. Let's talk about the tropics just a little bit. The good news is the headline is we don't see any tropical cyclone threat for us on the First Coast for at least the next 7 days. Let's talk a little meteorology. We call it the Intertropical Convergence Zone. It is just now starting to lift into the northern hemisphere, and it's where the northern trades meet the southern trades, or the northern hemisphere trade winds meet the southern hemispheric trade winds. And again, that's just another reason for warm, moist air to meet, and when it meets, thunderstorms develop. And then it takes the correct upper level conditions, which means, which for tropical systems, there should be no shear. It's basically the tropical way to try to develop sort of a chimney. Once that chimney can form, then low pressure can develop, and then as long as there's no shear, we can get a tropical depression, a storm, and of course a hurricane. Now the good news is, although yes, the Intertropical Convergence Zone will be there, lifting slowly northward through September, and it'll have maybe 100 to 120 organized systems that will track, move from east to west, over the Atlantic, over the Caribbean, into the Eastern Pacific. Typically, there's too much shear for them to form, or the water's not warm enough. So that's good news. As far as the water being warm enough, it's already warm enough. So as we've reached the modern era, and I would say that's been over the last 20 years, it's really just a question of what about the shear? And fortunately, especially this time of the year, we expect a lot of shear. And so that's why for most of this activity, we don't see much developing. But the gyre, the Central American gyre is forming. It's a circulation, but notice it's not a perfect circle. Speaking of not perfect, cool. But still, we love his energy. Ross is now buckling up. Good to see you, Ross. We're going from climatology on the tropical analysis to maybe at least for the next 10 days, a little bit of good news. But Ross and I haven't had to talk about this yet because Ross has been stuck in corporate meetings all day long. And we love our bosses and respect them. But sometimes, just let us do what we want to do. So anyhow, I'll let Ross listen.
I was here a couple hours early.
Yes, you were.
Let you know how much I love you folks out there.
And Ross has to, whereas I get to leave at 7:30, Ross is going to be here till, hopefully not beyond 11:31 or 11:35, but we'll see. So let's see if Ross agrees with this. So we've all had plenty of confidence that within that gyre, a tropical cyclone will form. It's probably going to be called Alvin. It looks like it. I didn't mean to go so fast there. Let me back up for a second.
Confused with Simon or Theodore.
Exactly. This is the tropical Alvin. See if I can get it to go backwards. Why is it not going backwards for me? There it goes. Okay. It looks like even if the circulation center makes it to Mexico, by the time it does, which would be up toward a place called Manzanillo, which is up toward Baja, it looks like it'll be weakened. But so it's more of a big event just because it'll be the first tropical cyclone of the year. So Ross and I are in total agreement with that. Hurricane Center is going to be talking about that, and that low pressure system picture kind of paints where it's been and then where it's headed. However, at least in my mind, especially going on the typically conservative European model, I was thinking that at least there might be something to watch on the eastern part of that gyre, get into the Northwest Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, maybe in about 7 to 9 days. And it looks to me like the European has really backed off of that. The GFS, another model we look at, folks, that continues to try to spin something out, but that's like beyond the 14 to 20 day period.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not even next week, but it'll be like next weekend into the following week.
Right.
JFS was trying to show that. And was it the latest run that had it going over Cuba and then just taking almost a due northeast course?
Yeah,
right off into the Atlantic
into
and
the east of us. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a completely different thing that it showed.
Right.
24 hours ago, it had it hitting Texas. So that's why you don't want to put too much stock into every single model run. There's a lot of variance.
Which is why I try to spend time, at least 10 days closer to the European. But even the European looks to me like it's going to produce a second tropical cyclone behind Alvin. So whatever it be is
on the eastern side.
On the eastern side, but head into the Pacific Basin.
Now, I do want to ask you, because we have not gotten to talk about this at all yet.
We have not.
There is going to be a plume of Saharan dust, a pretty thick plume, that comes westward here, really by the end of the week, but especially over the weekend and into the first half of next week. Do you think that has anything to do with why some of those models have backed off a little bit, at least for timing-wise? Because we did. At the beginning of the week, it did show maybe something trying to develop by the middle of next week, and a lot of them aren't showing that now. Do you think some of that drier air getting advected in perhaps has something to do with that, at least a little bit? It does weaken, or,
I see where you're getting at, and I agree that is an inhibitor. In my mind, the bigger thing, at least as far as the European, is that the European for quite a while had been first of all, kicking out an upper level trough, which is what is bringing this front in rapidly off to the northeast. High pressure ridge building north of it, but then anticyclonic, and so no shear developing over the central and western Caribbean and actually moving west and northwest. Whereas at least over the last two runs of the European, it shows that first trough lifting out fast, but instead of the ridge building in, it keeps the ridge out toward Texas and allows yet another deep trough to drop right down the eastern seaboard. And so then that upper level anticyclone can't form. So
and I did see that trough digging in, especially you look at like the 250 millibar, the jet stream coming right down toward us again.
That was a big shift, at least as far as the European. So and I agree that Saharan dust definitely can be an inhibitor. So I think the two of those
combined,
I think at least I'd say for the next 10 days that. And we weren't saying yesterday that the system in the Caribbean and the Gulf would head our way, but I was thinking that maybe by next Thursday or Friday there might be the first Atlantic Basin cone, maybe not necessarily touching us. I'm beginning to think now we might be able to go 10 days at least.
Yeah, and I mean that is still a possibility, but looking less and less likely.
Yeah. Okay.
So
thank you, folks. Appreciate you letting us have that conversation. Here it is already 20:43. I better zip here through it. So Ross, look at that heat index. Ross, I've already talked about the record temperatures and the increasing thunderstorms. Talked about the activity coming at us from the west this evening.
Yeah.
Looks like it's going to temper down overnight tonight. Then become even more widespread tomorrow. Here's the latest model. Shows that scatter fashion. I think this is a little behind, Ross. I don't know if you've even had a chance to look at radar.
A little bit.
Yeah, there's already some clusters moving into Brunswick. So I think this might be a little bit slow, but still generally shows the idea of the activity both increasing from the west and then probably getting enhanced as it hits the East Coast sea breeze.
I think similarly, though, to last night, we'll still watch for some isolated stuff in southeast Georgia this evening.
Yeah. And I think even northeastern Florida through 8 or 9 o'clock. But I'm thinking by the time you're ready to leave tonight at 11.
Everything's offshore.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then at the very end of this 24-hour model, it already shows stuff popping for tomorrow. Here's a bigger picture. I haven't had a chance to do the synoptic analysis on this, Ross, so I apologize for that. But I do think it supports what I talked to the folks about earlier, and that is a big vortex off to the north, weather wrapping around it, first south out of Colorado into Texas, then from Texas east toward us. And so that's why we see thunderstorms impacting 60% of us tomorrow. And when the storms do form, once again, they're going to blow right through the sea breeze. They'll make it all the way up to the beaches, maybe not till later. And then I talked earlier, Ross, about the fact that Friday is our weather impact alert day. We don't think it's going to rain that total time period. We think there'll be a couple rounds, but I mentioned to them, Ross, that we're hoping that when we get closer, maybe we can break it down into the timing of maybe 2 different rounds.
Yeah, I think waves in the morning and a strong line of storms probably after dinner or even closer to sunset there Friday night.
There's your headline, folks. Thanks for joining us, Ross. Thank you, everybody. And Bella kept all these moving puzzles together. So thank you, Bella.
Take care, guys.